Thank you so much. This is just gorgeous, this facility. I have to say I came from a family of readers. My father, who never even went to college or anything, was one of the most literate people. And in the mornings, if we didn't have a book on the breakfast table, we had to read the cereal box. So it was really important to be literate and be a part of the libraries. And this is a great place, and it's a real honor to be here. Martha and I are so proud to be a part of the Durham community, working with the Durham Farmers Market. And I'm going to turn it over to her and let her tell you about the history of our farm.
Thanks so much, Joanne, and it's so great to see so many of our regular customers. And we've been telling them in the last 2 or 3 weeks to please come today if they could. But like Steve said, I'm a farm girl, and my mother was a farm girl, grew up in Wilson County on a farm, and you'll see a picture of her in a few minutes. She was a member, and I'm also a member of the O. Henry Book Club. She was the oldest member for 70 years. Can you imagine being a member of a book club for 70 years? So it was the old, and I can tell you some stories about that. Was the eating. You had to eat your dinner, full course, silver china, and be there at the door at 6:30, not 5 minutes early, not 5 minutes after, but 6:30. So books have been a very important part of my life, and it's my mother's, and especially of Steve. Steve's brother is Joe Mobley, could not be here today, and he has authored many books on history, North Carolina history, and is a history professor at NC State. And we have one of Joe's books up there on so maybe you can go see in a few minutes. We do enjoy flowers. We enjoy not just all work all the time. People say we work all the time. And my wonderful mother passed away this past March at the age of 90 years old. And she was in her mindset, and she taught school. She was a public school teacher for 45 years. And my father was a work, driven person. But I have calmed down a little, my husband says, and try not to work and push so much, especially since I have a public job also. This is a picture of our family farm. It's on a hill across from the farm that we live in, the old home place. My father, in 1991, after my bachelor uncle passed away, says, Martha and Steve, we want you to come and get 20 acres of this 1,000-acre farm, and we're going to cut it out and let you have the home place and a lot of these old buildings. But I want you to keep these old buildings up. But I would have had to win the lottery several times over to keep all those old buildings up. So we did select which buildings we wanted to take down. We had a building for the turkeys, a separate building for the ducks, a separate old kitchen that, a lot of the old homes had a separate detached kitchen because of fires, and then the main home place. So we try to keep up, but he says, there's 2 barns I want you to keep up. They were all on the farm, but he says, keep those 2 barns up. So I'm trying to win the lottery and get those 2 barns fixed up like we're supposed to have them fixed up. On this hill that's overlooking our farm, I want to have a dinner one night serving our farm products using chefs in Raleigh and Durham area, and I hope you will come and buy a ticket. This funds from this will be to establish a Women in Agriculture endowment fund for my late mother's name, and just to promote other farmers, women farmers in North Carolina. And Steve will tell you about that in a few minutes. She was the first woman to fly an airplane in this region when she was 20 years old. And she didn't tell that she also was the cousin of Ava Gardner. She was one of the Gardner girls from down there in Wilson, Johnson County. So I did take her to see Ava Gardner's museum in Johnson County, Smithfield, before she passed away. But our farm is Meadow Lane Farm, and we started that probably after Steve and I got married in 1989. But this farm is part of Leonard family farm. The Leonard farm has been in my family, the Leonard family, for over 100 years. And my grandfather had one arm. He had it cut off in the sawmill business, and gangrene set in. And he almost died, but he was able to survive the gangrene in his mid-20s, and he worked hard all the time in the logging, and then went into farming. And then when he died at the age of 62 in 1940, my father and his bachelor brother took over as Leonard Brothers, the farming operation. And my father always told the men that worked there, it's going to be my daughter that takes over the farm, not my son. My brother moved here to Apex area and was in the tree business. But I'm the one, and my father always had in his mind, she's going to be the one that comes back. She's the one that studied agriculture. She's the one that studied animals and loves animals, and she's going to come back and run the family farm. And I was able to find Steve, with another animal lover, to come back and help me with the farm. We had very diverse, it's a sustainable farm because we have done everything. We raised the goats and the sheep, and my grandmother had the ducks and the geese, and a hill for the sheep, a hill for the goats, and we're very, very diverse. We also had the first tractor in Franklin County, my father told me, even though I prefer mules, even to this day, I'd rather have a team of mules because I'm not a mechanic. That's one thing I'm not, that was my brother's job. We had tobacco, we had flue-cured, and also Maryland burley tobacco until I went to college. In 1977, they stopped raising tobacco when I went to NC State University. They also were in the corn seed business, and I have a little container up there on the table of one of their little containers of their tobacco seed. They were certified tobacco seed distributors in the area. So tobacco and crops were always very important. But after 1977, they sort of kicked up the ramp as far as beef cattle. They've always had beef cattle, many breeds. And my father always told me a bad cow is going to eat just as much as a good cow. So I'm going to buy the best genetics that I can. And he did. He would go to Montana. He would go to Georgia. He would go to South Carolina. He would go to Kansas, wherever he could. And we were one of the first farms to use embryo transfer for a while there to bring in different genetics to our farm. And I was so pleased that my family and my ancestors were very open-minded about technology and using different crops and forages to improve the soil naturally, such as planting Lespedeza in worn-out tobacco land that would improve the soil. Also, they had Lewisburg's first dairy farm, and I did find one of my grandfather's dairy bottle, empty milk jug bottles, glass, about a half a gallon with QS Leonard Dairy up in the attic. And then an antique dealer called one day and says, you know, I found this QS Leonard Dairy bottle at an antique show in Raleigh for $40. Do you want me to buy it, Miss Leonard? My mom says, no, $40 for a glass empty bottle? No. And then I went back about 2 or 3 years, and a vendor wanted $600 for that glass bottle. I said, they can keep that $600 a bottle, but I'm not. But that was he was one of the first dairy, and they supplied milk for Lewisburg College and also the residents of Lewisburg with horse-drawn buggies. And my father told me stories when he was in his teens that he had to go out and milk those cows, 23, 24 milk cows in the morning and at night. So when he got older, he refused to milk a cow. He never milked a cow when he got older. So that was my job. We also have forage crops, hay. And we have about 40 acres on the ground right now, and I do bring in neighbors with their custom machinery to help me bale my hay. I do not go and spend $60,000 on a new hay baler or a tractor because I would have to pay for the fuel and my time, so I'll just hire my young neighbor to come with his new equipment. We also have timber, and we also have sheep, meat goats, and we have poultry. We have Australian Shepherd dogs also that help us on the farm. That's something that Steve started. This is our picture I found in my extension office, my old extension office before we moved to the new facility. Maybe 10 years ago, my secretary was getting ready to clean out a closet, and she had an old box of slides in there, and she was getting ready to trash them. I says, wait a minute, let me look at those slides. And there was, I recognized this picture. My grandmother had a separate photo of my uncle and a separate of my father with their championship steers as shown at the regional Rocky Mount show. So my father always had that mentality. It's better to buy and feed a good cow than it is a bad cow. So he always looked for muscling and thickness, and Steve and I have incorporated even more now on our farm with other, such as DNA testing, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. Steve, I'm gonna let you talk about farm facts.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Farms in North Carolina, we have about 52,000. They're going down. Land in farms, 8 million acres, is still one of the largest businesses in North Carolina. The average size of the farm, about 164 acres, which is fairly small. You know, if you go to Kansas, it's going to be 2,000 acres. Net income, you know, over $3 million. We still export a lot of farm products in North Carolina. And the farm business is, considering the economy, has actually done very well, particularly in livestock. And if you've gone to Whole Foods or anywhere, you can see price of meat and everything else has actually risen in all. So agriculture has actually done very well in the recession that we've gone through. North Carolina has always been a very diverse farm economy. We think about it as being just tobacco, but what tobacco allowed was for farms to have a cash income so they could do other things. If Martha and I went to Iowa, 2 years ago on a June morning, and it was probably the deadest place. I hope there's nobody here from Iowa. But it was probably one of the deadest places I've ever been. It was just soybeans and corn. There weren't even any birds. There were no gardens or anything. Well, if you go to any part of agriculture in North Carolina, you're going to see a lot of diversity. You know, gardens, pumpkins, pigs, everything, a lot of birds. And so we're not, particularly on our farm, we don't do row crops anymore. The soybeans, corn, cotton, that kind of thing. We do mainly forages and the cattle and the pigs. So North Carolina's been blessed in a lot of ways. People make living off of a small plot of land. Being a Southerner, I'm going to have to tell you a story, of course. And I never understood, my grandfather Rose, Dorsey Rose, had a farm in Nash County. And it was actually a rented farm. He didn't even own the land. And it was only less than 30 acres. And he had about 2 acres of tobacco. And that's good. But he raised a son and 3 girls, one of them being my mother. But he raised a lot of corn. And I said, well, I couldn't imagine how he could make a living. Well, all 3 of those girls went to college. 2 of them got master's degree. One of them, son, was a Morehead scholar and went to Harvard. I said, well, how in the world did he get that done? Well, I'm about 55 now. Well, maybe a little more. Anyway, I met a gentleman when I turned 50 that knew my grandfather. I said, how did he do it? He said, son, don't you know, he sells that corn as value added. In other words, he sold it in the liquid form. He said, even in the 1930s, even after Prohibition, North Carolina was dry. But when the governor down there on Blunt Street had special guests, he had a special car and a special waiter that went down to Nash County and got some of Dorsey's best. So that's value added. Can you blame him? You know, he had 24 grandchildren. Every one of us got a college education. And he couldn't read and write. So that's the transition, North Carolina agriculture. And you can talk about the high tunnel.
I was in a meeting on Friday, and agriculture is the #1 industry as far as bringing in income still for North Carolina. Number 2, they say, is the military. Number 3 is tourism. So agriculture still is a major player in the state of North Carolina. We did branch out in the past 2 years with something called a high tunnel greenhouse. It's heated by the sun. It has the vents at the top that open when it gets too hot and closes. The sides on both sides roll up and down. But we had a 2-acre field that was the richest dirt on the farm, the richest soil. So we decided, okay, Steve, let's go. And I had an idea. Let's convert this 2 acres, take it out of hay production, and put it in organic vegetables. So that's what we have done. And we brought in a young man from Mexico, the state of Guerrero, Mexico, to help us run this. I says, there's no way Steve and I, at our age, can go out there and till up organically and keep the weeds and everything out and manage this 2-acre plot. But this is the center of this 2-acre plot. We compost our animal waste, animal manures where the cows feed in the winter, let it sit and cook and flip that rich compost, and then put it inside this high tunnel and also on this acres. Steve will be harvesting organic corn on Saturday at the Downtown Farmers Market. Can you imagine fresh sweet corn this coming Saturday, the bicolor? He also has the most beautiful green beans, yellow green beans, Napa cabbage, tomatoes in the greenhouse. Can you believe it? Tomatoes this high. And the fella had to go in there yesterday after helping us at the market and go and tie those tomatoes up. I says, I have got to research on the internet these tomatoes. When are they going to stop growing? They're going to grow to the ceiling.
It's all solar power. There's no heat in here. It all works on the sun. I've been standing out here in February, and it'll be 40 degrees outside. Open that door, and inside it'll be 78 to 80 degrees inside. Totally power the sun.
Right. But we had some friends from Durham Farmers Market who happened to be an engineer come and help us construct that green high tunnel about a year ago. And he says, Martha, this is the last one I'm going to do. I says, let's put the whole field in high tunnels. No, Martha, this is the last one I'm going to do. But it took about a month, and the vegetable production is just awesome in that field. Lettuces have been started in the high tunnel, onions, like a Vidalia onion, arugula, beets, Napa cabbage, cucumbers are all in this high tunnel. We do promote local food, eating local, and this is with my work with the North Carolina Cooperative Extension, who is NC State University, is actually my employer, along with the County of Franklin. But the NC State Cooperative Extension's initiative this past year is to promote local foods. So a part of my work is promoting local. My mom was a home economics teacher, believed in food. My whole family believes in eating and raising food. So they said, Martha, you're the perfect person. So I have had 3 of these local food roasts, and all the funds go to our United Way of Franklin County to help projects. And I bring the community together with serving at least 10%. Most of our meals are 60 to 70%, but we just finished one up about 2 weeks ago. Steve and I try to go around the country and learn the new technology. Even though we will really like to promote the old and still live with the old, we still know that we have to research what's happening new, such as DNA testing for the tenderness gene is one issue that we've learned.
We were standing out there in June and looking at a beautiful bunch of heifers, and they said, I asked him, I said, what was the bull you used? He said, Bull Durham.
I says, wait a minute.
That was his name. I said, well, right now, and I had just taught Mark and Melanie the workforce and was selling right down in
Downtown Durham. I says, I've got to get some of that Bull Durham to Lewisburg so we can take it back to Bull Durham. But that Bull Angus bull is, and this is a group of about 60 heifers that they really like, the Bull Durham bloodlines for the Black Angus. We also participate in a lot of tours. We also this past year donated one of our heifers, our outstanding Black Angus heifers, for a student scholarship for my late Senator James D. Speed, who really was a promoter of agriculture in North Carolina. And we established an endowment in Franklin County, and that was completely funded by $15,000 this past year. And that money, that endowment, would continue to fund a scholarship for a child at the NC State Fair every year, either showing a beef heifer or a beef market steer. And we have 5 applications in my office now that the Senator Speed's son and another volunteer would select the winner. I won't, but I just had to make sure that endowment. So that's part of what we do for our farmers, give back every year with endowments or whatever we can do. Steve loves flowers. We both love flowers, and we love grafting old heirloom flowers and roses from our neighbors that have given us some of their cuttings. And now I'm going to turn it over back to Steve. He might be here for another couple hours, but talk about this.
Don't get me going about the Durham Farmers Market. It's fantastic. It's been rated as one of the top 10 farmers markets in the United States. I'm the vice president and in charge of marketing, and we're very serious about what we do. It's very difficult to get in the market. You have to be inspected and then re-inspected. We randomly re-inspect everybody every year. Martha went Saturday and I didn't go. It was a rainy day and said it was kind of a bad day at the market. I said, well, a bad day in Durham is better than a great day at other markets. That's how good it is. And I encourage you, it's right down there on Foster Street. Everybody asks me where it's at. I said, just go downtown Durham and follow the crowd. That's where it's at. And I get what I don't grow myself. That's where I buy my food. And last January, and we're full year. There's only one day we're not open, and that's the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Other times we're open year round. And I was buying delicious lettuce in January at the market. So it's something special, something dear to my heart. The vendors get along with each other. We have a really sound board of directors, really good bylaws and rules, and it's just a special place. So I invite you all to come. A lot of you know how great it is.
We also, in addition to beef is our main business that we sell, is our natural Angus beef. No antibiotics, no added hormones. We also sell pork. We do have pigs on my mom's adjacent. My mom is deceased. She deceased in March, but she believed in pigs. Every year, that was her family tradition, was to process and raise pigs. When she told me stories, when she was growing up in Elm City with 7 sisters, 7 siblings, they always processed 24, 26 hogs sometime around the Christmas holiday. But we grow steel pigs behind her house at her farm. And she told me when she was in the hospital in January, Martha, let's just wait one more year before we get some pigs, because she knew she was going to get better. But we decided to go ahead because she would want pigs in her pig house behind. So we do have pork, we have lamb, goat, organic vegetables now, and also holiday Christmas wreaths. Greenery from our farm is what we will be selling in November.
One thing about her mother, she only went to the Durham Farmers Market one time. It was in the winter, and she visited her friend, and she just loved it. And she was so proud of Martha going back and us retailing. And she got to visit her friend during the winter months. Well, in March, we have a bale that raised for the winter market, and she would always in the morning get up and give me this finger. You make sure you're there on time. She'd be the first one on time.
Be the first one there.
When the bell rang on that day in March, my phone rang. It was, she had passed almost simultaneously. She was some kind of gal.
This is one of the seed barns. We had these barns scattered throughout the farm. They had one for mules, and the one for mules is beside in our yard also. You'll see that on the front cover of our brochure. But this is also the seed barn, 3 stories, absolutely beautiful gable roofs inside. So when I do get the lottery, I would love to turn that into a restaurant or a house or someplace, apartment for somebody to stay. But that is a beautiful seed barn that they would use. This is my mom's picture. We had her 90th birthday celebration about a year ago, October 28th. Don't have a birthday party for me? I says, oh yes we are. So we had a big bash at her house, and she enjoyed it immensely in the end. We also try to market on the internet, but this is one place that I don't really have time to work on, but maybe Steve will. But we need to do a better job of marketing on the internet with Facebook and some other avenues. Our future of our farm, we have one heir, and that is my late brother's son. He is 10 years old, has moved from Apex to his mother's family, to be close to his mother's family in Pennsylvania, Palmyra, Pennsylvania. So he gets to come down and learn about the farm and fish. We just don't all work when he's there. We like to go fishing and hunting and do some things that he enjoys also, so he can still stay on the farm. Joanne asked about development pressures and what can we think about the future of farms in our area. Several years ago, but 2 or 3 years ago, I did receive a grant from the Department of Agriculture, and I hired 2 consultants. Durham County has this plan also, but Jerry Cohen had written and researched Durham County's agriculture development and farmland protection plan, because that's dear to my heart, is farmland protection. So I hired Jerry and also an attorney, ag attorney, Andrew Brannon. Some of you might know him. He's based out of Hillsborough now in private practice. But those 2 gentlemen researched, and I have the document on the table over there, the past, the present, and the future of how we should be handling farmland and keeping it in family farms. Also, several years ago with my job with the Cooperative Extension, I started an Innovative Ideas Grant Program. Men, women, whoever could apply for that, and that Whole Foods helped me with that initiative. Just a couple $1,000s could help a small beginning farmer with a lot of good ideas. One of those farmers that received that grant is SAS Institute's gardener, main gardener, that feeds and works with the chefs there. So she has left Franklin County and moved to Raleigh to work for SAS, and she used her expertise and some of that grant funds to learn more about farming. North Carolina leads the nation in the rate of farmland losses. Since 2002, the state has lost more than 6,000 farms, according to the USDA report. There are something called VAD, or Volunteer Ag District programs. Durham County has one. There are also EVAD programs. Franklin County was just able to get an EVAD program established several weeks ago, approved by our county commissioners. The EVAD is an Enhanced Volunteer Ag District program, and that is mandatory for 10 years. Our farm is in the VAD program, and I started that VAD program in Franklin County in 2003 with the appointed board. We also have conservation programs and young and beginning farmer opportunities in Franklin County. Like I said, we were the 36th county in North Carolina in 2003. Our farm has these signs posted throughout. If you drive into Franklin County on the county lines, you see this is a volunteer agriculture district county. So most of our county is highlighted in blue now. So if somebody moves in within a mile radius of our farm, they are supposed to be targeted with the tax and also the register of deeds, knowing that they're moving in within a mile radius. And there's a similar program in Durham County also. But it's called the VAD program, and that was established with NC State University. But our farm was one of the first ones in this program. This is why we're here today, to talk about some of the issues of concern. And one of them is development of farmland. And you know, you've seen that we were instrumental in establishing the VAD program in the county, but also we've had, in our personal experience, I should have bought a 100-acre tract adjacent to me. My mom says, Martha, you just only want the land that's adjacent to you. You can't buy all the land adjacent to you, but we have been able to buy back my aunt's land. My father told me, before he passed away in 1996, he says, Martha, Lucy's land is going to become available one day. Her children do not want that farm. So see if you can able to buy that land back. So Steve and I had long discussions. Steve had to sign off on the deed. We were able to buy that farm back at a high price, but we were able to keep that farm there attached as part of the main farm and have our cattle graze that farm. And so we're still up to debt, but we're paying off of that debt. But I'm glad we were able to buy that land. Has been some other land available adjacent to us that I wish we had bought. I had bought when I was younger. And I heard last week that a major farm that I always thought that had received a lot of easements and conservation easements is up for sale. 2,100-acre farm, and they're dividing it in half. And I looked on the internet, and an NFL player has got an option to buy half of that farm and close on it this week. But that farm was in the VAD program, and it was a hunting preserve, so it was very quiet adjacent to us, not much development, not much traffic. But that farm is up. Also, property taxes, we are one of the highest taxed counties, our tax rate in the state. And our property taxes was probably over $10,000 this year. So that's a major expense for us that we have to account for every year. Estate taxes. This past year, it was over $5 million in estate taxes. And January 1st, it's supposed to go down to $1 million. So that's a concern of a lot of our farmers. And you know, a lot of their machinery is valued at worth over $1 million, not including just their farmland or property taxes. So that's a big issue. And I try to work with estate planning meetings and attorneys and bring them in and bring our farmers in to learn about what options they can do to protect their farms and what can they put them in LLCs or whatever. To try to eliminate some of these estate taxes. Labor challenges is a big one. We would never have gone into organic, very labor-intensive programs if we did not have this gentleman from Mexico that we had developed a friendship with. He had worked in the tobacco, with neighborhood tobacco farmers, and he was always, and a lot of his friends that are still there now, are very thin, they're very pale, they're very sick, they have no appetite. When they go in those tobacco fields and come out, they say they just don't have an appetite with all those chemicals that they put on that tobacco. But he says, Martha, my friends very thin, aren't they? I says, yeah, they're very thin. So we're there now. We have 3 of them in our house eating. Steve fed them lunch today before they came. You make sure you eat. And we bring food from the Durham Farmers Market every Saturday. Please eat. So labor challenges, Mario will be with us. His name is Mario Villamil Delego, and we have got him here legally with the H-2A program. We were very fortunate to have him here with the H-2A, but he's scheduled to go back in December and will have to come back in February. We also are working for a green card to get him here and his family to live with us for a long time. Steve and I also are trying to get his mother and his brother, who's an English professor in Mexico, here to visit the month of October. So that's one, so we can keep him happy. We treat our employees well. And he says, Martha, I want to go on a boat to go deep sea fishing. I love to fish. I says, okay, Stephen, on the way up here, how are we going to find a boat at Moorhead or somewhere to take him out deep sea fishing? I says, as long as you don't get pulled over in the ocean and a fish eats you, a shark, we'll try to get you deep sea fishing. So we try to treat our employees well, and they treat us well. Marketing of our farm products is another issue. That's one thing that Steve works on as a former marketing specialist. That was his job when he retired, is to work. You want to talk about marketing, Steve?
No.
Okay. We also found that we have to be an expert in every field, and I guess I'm lucky to be an extension agent so I can see the latest trends. If there's a workshop or a license that need to be held, such as a pesticide license or another type of license or animal waste license, I can bring that home-raised or practical experience to other farmers. We have to be an expert on seed selection, soil management, machinery repairs, and animal husbandry. That's our main issues that we have to deal with. Another one that I did not put on there this morning was women in agriculture. Women farmers. Over half of the farmland in this country is owned by women, and I see discrimination of women when it comes with our peers. And if I want to go buy a tractor today, I'm a big lady, so if I was a petite little lady, it would even be more of a challenge for me. But I'm a bigger lady, and I can go into the tractor dealerships, but a lot of them, if I'm calling them on the phone, they don't want to deal with me. A lot of those mindsets are having to change, though, because it's a lot more small farms, and a lot of those small farms have to have tractors and machinery. But me being a woman in agriculture is a challenge, I'm gonna tell you, and even to this day. Questions? Steve says, Martha, you've talked enough. Any questions for us? It's about 1,000 acres. And we do have about over 100-acre tract in Warren County, neighboring county, with trees. I didn't want any more tillage, but we wanted some extra income maybe when the lumber prices, timber prices are way down now in value. So maybe when those trees are ready to harvest in another 30 years, maybe the price will go back up. One way we're able to help pay our property tax is hunting. We do lease our land out. I talked to my mother about this in the last 10 years, and she was very open-minded to let hunters from this triangle area that needed land to hunt to come in there and have access, get our hunting rights, and then they can go in there and help pay our property taxes. But they have the right to come in on our farm, and most of that, we have a contract: no trash, no fires, no litter, be conscious about the paths, close the gates, and we've had really good hunters. We did have a group of men that worked at Liggett Myers Tobacco Company in Durham for many, many years that would come in there and hunt and fish. And they have become our family too. They're our another extended family because we get to know them. And we just don't want anybody. Steve has started we were able in the past year, with my mother's help, to buy back a cottage, or my uncle was a bachelor, his cottage in the woods. That's always been in my family for many years, but in the 1990s, mid-1990s, my parents decided to sell that tract of land, small tract, and my uncle's cabin or cottage to a couple from Raleigh. And luckily when they sold it in the deed, they says if it's ever sold again, that Martha or my late brother would have the first chance to buy it back. And Steve and I discussed it. Steve says, don't you buy that land back. Don't you buy that cabin back.
Guess who's up there every Saturday night?
And then, so Steve, that was another way of avenue for some income, is to release that cottage out.
From Ontario to spend the weekend
there
this weekend.
And so
It's just gorgeous. It's going to be slaughter. I had a friend who I went to graduate school with in Oklahoma State, and he's in charge of extension in North Dakota. And he came to give a presentation in Boone. I said, well, if you ever come to North Carolina, I'm going to go pick you up. You're going to spend the weekend with us and let you have a cottage. And he says, you know how to talk. So, but he says, it was so, I don't listen to TV much, but it was so quiet, I had to turn the TV on.
But it's fishing over there. You can see the deer come out of the woods, and the fox and the skunk.
We have a pair of nesting green herons, blue herons, white egrets, kingfishers. Had a friend who's in charge of the Durham Bird Watching Society come out and said he'd never seen so much diversity of bird life in one area. So it's really nice.
And we do have weeds, and we have other, but we do not spray a lot of chemicals on our farm. That's one thing that we have virtually stopped doing, is we don't have to have everything manicured. We'll have, but we want the wildlife. We don't care about.
30 bluebird boxes.
Right, all around the farm. We believe in putting up bluebird boxes every year and having those
We
clean.
have them year round. You know, a lot of times you think bluebirds are just in the spring and summer, but we have them in the wintertime.
But Steve said, "Don't you buy that cabin? Don't you buy it." So he.
He was wrong.
And then we've been able to tap into springs. We knew why they settled there in the late 1700s. The people, our property was part of the Jones family, and then they had bought it from the Perry family. The Perrys owned Casein Plantation outside of Lewisburg, and that was thousands and thousands of acres. So that's when the main house was built, was in the 1783, and it was put together with Roman numerals and pegs. And we have got, did you bring a peg?
No.
But we do have, when we renovated the bottom floor of the house, we saw that, and the carpenter saw that. Right, and then that is, so they probably put it up in one day or a weekend, put the main part of the house on there. My grandmother's added on, and we've added on. Anything else? Yes, ma'am?
Could you say more about what the VAD program is?
It's it stands for Voluntary Agricultural Districting Program, and it helps protect farmland and let people in the community recognize that this is a farm, that you're moving in close to a farm, so you might have dust, you might have a tractor starting up at night, you might have a rooster crowing, so please realize that you are moving in close to a farm. Within a mile radius. It does not protect those farms that are a bad or environmental hazard. Let's say if it's a hog lagoon that overflows or something like that, it does not protect those type of farms. It protects the ones that are good stewards of the land. And I know they have one here in Durham County. We have over 22,000 acres now in Franklin County in the VAD program. Yes, ma'am?
How do you become a certified organic? What do you have to
It is a lot of
get a certification?
a lot of paperwork.
We had, even though NC State is one of the top 4 agricultural schools in the country, we had to go to Clemson. And we had to pay them to drive up to our farm. Paying how much money?
About $200 or $300, and then it's a $500 fee a year for them to come out and just for the certificate and then they'll come out and inspect the farm. We have to keep detailed records, and we have to be. We had to wait 3 years before we could get in the program and make sure no chemical fertilizer was applied. Everything was, the USDA certifies it, and it's a thick manual, about that thick, with all the regulations that you can download off the internet. We have to use organic certified seed, and that's what we were doing on the way up here, is looking at an organic seed catalog, and there's challenges with that. Because if it's a lot of real wet years, some of those seeds don't germinate as well, but we'll have to replant. But we do like providing our customers with organic, because we had the natural nutrients there with composted manures that we could use. So it was a natural fit for this 2 acres to be in organics. It's a lot more labor as far as weed control, and Mario out there plowing and using a lot of stuff by hand, hoeing. But he says, "Martha, this organic mucho work." I says, "Yes, it's mucho work." But our customers like the mucho vegetables when they know that they're getting something organic. Miss Joanna?
Is the tax less on the voluntary agricultural district? Is that the farmers or?
No, there is something. The land must be in ag use taxation, and that's throughout the whole state. There is a lower rate for taxes if you can prove that you are a farm for so many years. I think it's 5 years. And it's different. You can either be in forestry, you can be in horticulture, you can be in open land that you must harvest and prove that you are a legitimate farmer.
But if you sell it for development, then you have to have an ad valorem tax. In other words, you have to pay the back taxes on it, which is not anything we want to do. But if you sell it in the future, you have to repay that tax break.
But if we had to pay full tax value, we could not continue to farm. We could not. $10,000, that's a lot of money. We don't have any children, but that's helping pay the schools and the roads and everything like that. But that's a lot of money.
The average farm for $1 tax we spend, we get 70 cents of services. For the average suburban person, for $1, they get $1.25 in our area. So we're subsidizing schools and everything, which is okay. But and then the estate tax thing, of course, that gets more complicated too. We actually looked at putting conservation easements, and that actually raises the value of the land. So that when you have to pay the death tax, you have to actually pay more if you put land in conservation easement, because realtors and everything, they want to sell the land that's adjacent to a conservation easement. In our situation, we have a lot of open land forages. So they don't have to come in there and cut down a lot of trees and grind a lot of stumps. And they've got this conservation easement on the stream that goes to Tar River. And that actually increases the value of the land for the estate tax part.
And that's what that document did with those two authors. They researched and found out the tax rate and how the farmers, agriculture is actually subsidizing a lot of the other development in the county. And that was all researched in that document. Yes, ma'am?
What do you think of Margaret Mearen's portrayal of the agricultural?
Her book several of her books have been in my book club, but I'm going to turn that question over to Steve, because Steve is an avid reader, weekly reader. Steve, you answer that.
Pretty accurate. That's about the best I can say. So, one of her books, I don't know, it wasn't the last one, the other one was kind of violent. I didn't really care for it. Yeah, a little more blood and guts in it. I really care for her, but yeah, it's fairly accurate. And she has, of course, we all know it's Johnson County.
Yeah.
Growing up in North, I lived here all my life. I can read Johnson County.
But we're glad that she's gone back to her farm.
Her father is like the story of my granddaddy. He was a moonshiner, but he looked after his family, and she became judge and everything. So I think it's fairly accurate. I think some of the prejudices in the law in there are really accurate. I think in our area, there's a lot of prejudice against the Mexican Latino workers. They're uncalled for because they're the ones that are doing the work. And they're good people, and if you treat them good, they'll treat you good. That they're dedicated people. I sat down at lunch today with them. We had Coca-Cola, and I made a big pot of gumbo. They would give you anything, they would work themselves to death for it. We couldn't do it. Mario came all the way across the continent to work for us.
And I wonder why he always wanted to send shoes back. He's infatuated with shoes. And we send a care package back to Mexico to his family. He has 3 children and a wife. And we always send a care package back every 2 weeks. So we went to Hudson Belts last week and went to the sale rack, clearance rack, with the summer clothes because it's still hot there, and bought clothes. and shipping those back to Mexico. That's shipping out tomorrow. But he's infatuated with shoes. So we go to shoe show and buy a lot of shoes, or go to wherever and buy shoes. And then I says, Mary, why do you like shoes? He says, because when he was growing up, he didn't have shoes. In the rugged Rocky Mountains with all the scorpions, no shoes. And he's probably only in his early 40s. But back in those, when he was a young, his family could not afford shoes. So he's very thankful. Thank you, Martha and Steve, for providing me with my family with clothes, with shoes, with whatever.
His children didn't even have pencils to go to school with.
Calculator.
Can you imagine that?
And his daughter just started a college in Mexico, and the colored pencils, ink pens, she opened that box this week with the colored ink pens, and that was, she was very happy with that.
But technically, we can only pay for 8 hours of work. But trust me, he does more than like 12, 13.
So if he wants to go on a fishing expedition and not get pulled over in the boat, we're going to try to do that. Or if he wants to bring his mother and his brother here to visit, we'll try to do that. Whatever he wants to do. Discrimination also for women, like I said earlier. Going into the feed store, but then they need to know that my dollar is on pay just as much as the other big farmer that has the big soybeans and the tobacco. My money is just as good as their money when I have to pay that fee. Yes, ma'am? Hey.
Yeah, it's also before they said that the average commercial homes are 164 acres.
Right.
What would be a good size plot for self-sustaining?
That's a wonderful question.
One of the things that we're doing with the Durham Farmers Market, we have a rule that to sell at the market, you have to be within 70 miles of here, down Durham. Problem I have with this is, if you want to be a young farmer, how much land could you buy to be sustainable within 70 miles of Durham? Ain't much. Whereas adjacent to us in Warren County, they're still selling land for one of the poorest counties in the United States. And you can still buy land for, $1,000 an acre or less. And that's something we want to address as a board, looking at the farmers market in the future as we expand.
That's a wonderful question, because I work with a lot of small farmers, people that say they work in the Research Triangle but drive back in the evenings to live in Franklin County. And they come into my office and they says, how can I make this land pay for itself? I want to quit driving to Raleigh, and I want to make my farm sustainable and raise a decent living for my family. So that's what we have. Cooperative Extension has conferences, Successful Small Farms Opportunities Conferences, and we will bring in successful farmers in different areas, such as cheese making. Portia with her wonderful cheese with Chapel Hill Creamery. Christmas tree production. We'll bring in different successful agritourism and let them teach the small farmers about what they can make, how much money can they generate. If you can have 3, 4, or 5 acres of good production, and once you learn about it, and that's one thing Cooperative Extension can help with, is seeding rates, planting dates, and then help if you get into a good market and develop that market niche, then you can make a living with that, with maybe 5 or 6 acres. North Carolina Cooperative Extension. Yeah, and I saw in the lobby the Master Gardeners program is a part of the Cooperative Extension, along with 4-H. And I work with 4-Hers also with livestock. But the North Carolina Cooperative Extension part of NC State. But I don't say that. On front of my truck is Duke. It's a Duke license plate.
Everybody asks me, we both went to state graduates, and why you got a Duke license plate?
Everybody, my
I
bosses.
says, you see that money box? That's why.
The Durham Farmers Market helps us pay our bills on a weekly basis. If it was not for Durham and Durham Farmers Market, It would be a tough road. We enjoy it. We enjoy getting up and meeting people. And now that we've brought in Mario, we're getting him to interact more with people,
Vegetables.
with vegetables, and so
I
that.
love it so much on Friday night, I can't hardly go to sleep. I'm just ready to get up and go and meet all our good, and I guess the best statement was, after a while, the customers become your friends. And we have customers that have us for lunch and breakfast. You know, it's just a wonderful experience. You interact and everything. Even if they don't buy anything, they just come by and say hello. It's a really good experience. Yes,
How
ma'am.
active is 4-H these days, or smaller or larger?
You know, the county, they used to say it was all about cannon and cows. But I work with the kids with animals, and because I grew up in 4-H. That 4-H was an important part of my life. That's why I'm an extension agent today, is because I had great mentors and agents that I work with. But 4-H we still had the large numbers. 4-H kids had to come out and help me put on this local food roast. But they are doing other things such as electricity, going to leadership conferences. Children in the cities is a big group, like gang prevention, workshops with that, hunting and fishing, and giving demonstrations back in the month of June. So it is a very important program, but it's down the numbers I've seen in the last 20 years since I've been an agent as far as demonstrations. But now that we've able to go back into the school system, there are more children being aware of 4-H, and there's still one of the largest programs in my county is livestock, showing sheep. And that's one thing. Steve and I opened our farm for the past 30 years and let children from the city that didn't own animals come out, and we would gather up our best goats and gather up our best sheep. Steve and I even went to Virginia last year and bought some outstanding breeding stock sheep so these kids would be competitive. And we also have really good genetics cattle, and we've had state champions of our cattle on the North Carolina. And with these children showing, and they're so excited. Miss Martha, make a big deal of this. Go call the newspaper. I want to be in the paper. So it was a lot of work, and we would take 2 trailer loads of just animals to the state fair every year, and that was their joy. But I was dead at the end. Steve was dead. But it was worth a good, really good event for them. Oh yeah, we will be going to the state fair, and we'll have at least 17 children showing about 50 animals at the state fair. Turkeys, assortment of sheep, wool breed sheep, and also meat sheep, and meat goats, and then dairy goats, and then poultry. So we'll have those competitions, children showing in those, and the livestock. Yes, ma'am?
Is there a cooperative extension person every time?
Yes, ma'am. That's a wonderful question. There is. None. It's only one livestock agent in this state that's a county director, and that bothers me. That there's only one with a livestock background. There are probably at least half of the women now. A lot of them coming out and doing my job now are women. They go to NC State or wherever. They love livestock. They did not get in veterinary school, so they decide to follow a field. I had a young lady Friday shadow me at my office and interview me, and that's her job. When I retire in 6 years, she wants to take my job. And she's in Wake Forest area, only right down the road. But she was able to go to a celebration, Farm City Day celebration with me on Friday, and then sit down in the office and interview me about my challenges, some of the humiliating things that I've had to go through, and some of the best experiences that I've gone through. But Steve had my job before I had it. That's how we actually met. He was a cooperative extension livestock agent, and then he could only take it after 2 years. And my boss who hired me pulled me in his office at NC State in Raleigh, and he says, look, I know you're going to find a farmer and marry a farmer, and you're going to only stay on this job a couple of months before I have to hire somebody else. He's retired now. but I've been there the longest of anybody, 24 years. And I see him occasionally at basketball games. But that was what I always like to tell the young agents. They're going to only stay there a couple of years. And it is tough for a lady, a lot of these men livestock producers, to go in there and win them over. But that was my home county. And they knew that I had grown up around livestock. And my parents were successful raising livestock and making a living with livestock. Yes, ma'am?
I talk so much, but first when he said he was from Oklahoma State, he's from Stillwater. Well, I'm from Oklahoma. So,
Wow.
So when as he talked, I realized he was from North Carolina. He just went out there to school.
That's right.
No, I'm not an Okie. I spent 2 years there, and I really enjoyed it. Stillwater is a beautiful town.
I know
And it's actually one of the largest libraries in the United States at Oklahoma State. People don't know that.
Well, I know that.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
But I was born and grew up in an all-black city, all-black town, completely. But the farm agent and the 4-H, back in the 1920s, I won a prize at the fair for embroidery and hemming.
Right.
John Hood Franklin,
Yes,
Durham,
yes.
he grew up in Tulsa.
Yes.
We actually had dinner with
I'm from
him.
Mobley. Mobley was the biggest black town, 7,000
Wow.
people.
Wow.
And all around it were farmers, black farmers. And my father was the owner of a cotton gin, and he made over cotton. But I know how to pick peas
Right.
and hoe,
Ho.
everything.
Right.
But that's the thing, but in Stillwater, there were no African Americans, none.
What? And
When I was there, this was the early
They didn't allow
1900s.
us- They didn't allow us to go.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, they did not allow any blacks to attend.
This was like 1983, there were none.
Well, see, I was born, I'm 94.
Right.
Wow.
There were no
Right.
history. We were all black, and there's no history.
Was your county agent that you worked with, were they black or were they were right? That's right.
He was the 4-H person.
Right.
And
That's the way it was in North Carolina until the early 90s. North Carolina was actually the first state to integrate extension, to convert from segregated extension service. You had separate 4-H, black, white. North Carolina was the first state in the United States to integrate. Oklahoma was one of the last.
I had a cousin who finished Hamilton, and he came here way before I did as an agent.
But that's one of the things I love about Durham. The Durham Farmers Market is such diverse. I mean, with black, white, Latino, Asian, gay, straight. I mean, it's just people from Germany, people here in graduate programs and all. It's such a wonderful place to be on Saturday morning. It just has a vibrancy.
But you see, there's been a whole soup of black farmers against the United States because they didn't loan black farmers any money. They
That's
couldn't
right.
borrow if they needed to expand the farm.
Definitely.
So there's been for years a suit.
That's right.
It's supposed to be settled, and they're supposed to.
Yeah.
But I don't think they do.
Do you have any trouble getting liability insurance?
You have to have it.
Every year, see, we have 250 acres in Summer County, West Virginia. It's a couple of mountains. And every year, I get a letter from whoever to cover, just saying, I won't do it again.
Right.
The farm here will turn up somebody else.
That's
Our
right.
beer is tough. Martha can tell you more
Right.
about
Their
that.
president spoke at our conference that we had Friday.
The last one they turned up, the one that's covering us now, is one to one.
That's right. That's right. But we actually have our farm liability insurance for our meats and our farm products through a friend, one of our customers here at Durham. And he was able to find us product liability. But Farm Bureau would not touch it. They would not touch our meats or for $2 million, I believe. But my friend here, this is his daughter right now. So that's another vendor. She's fighting cancer.
Yeah, she's 16 years old, has lymphoma. She's been in hospital for a year.
And so that's
That's my girl, and
but that's,
she's gonna make it though.
but that's we have to go. He was able to find product liability insurance for that for us. For that.
Yeah, you'd have to have it.
From the meat business, we lease our land to an operator who is a little bit older than I am and has a lot more money than I do. And has made that money farming over the lifetime. And he sells white Angus cattle.
Right.
That's what we do.
Uh-huh.
And the thing about marketing, retailing beef, like I'm talking about going to Durham, and a lot of farmers say, oh, this sounds great. You know, I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna sell my steaks for $19 a pound, which we do. You know, they don't realize the amount of work that's involved. You know, it's not just go out there and set up a table. You know, we have a trailer, we have a display and all. And like I say, you have to be involved with people you don't normally interact with in a farm environment.
We
A lot
have
of farmers don't understand that.
A lot of people get involved in stuff like that and they never heard of it.
Yeah.
that's right.
And there's one thing, a lot of people don't understand this, but I have to buy my beef for myself. That sounds weird, but say on Friday afternoon, instead of going and retailing down there on Boston Street, I could have taken a steer on the hook. And right now, cattle prices are astronomical on the hook. So that's part of my overhead. I have to put that into what we're retailing in. It's what I could have sold that animal for as a live animal. So I'm literally have to buy the animal for myself. Even though I raise it right here on the farm.
And you have to keep it an extra year for it to be ready to be processed.
Right.
Instead of me selling it as 8 to 10 months old, we have to keep it till it's 18 months old.
Same thing with the goats and the lambs and everything else.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to put in an advertisement for our local farmers market, the child, I guess, of the downtown farmers market. There's one out here in Greenwood Commons on Saturday mornings, which is, I think is doing quite a good business. Some of the same people sell.
Right.
there,
Yeah.
sell downtown.
Right, right.
But
And
it's really nice not having to drive all the way down.
Downtown. That's right.
yeah, I don't think it's for our business. And we actually wrote a letter to the administration commending them. Putting out somebody else's candle is not going to make yours any brighter. So I do think that at some point we're going to get to the point where we're going to have too many local farmers markets. And it's, I mean, like we say, there are some people that's their living on Saturday, 4 hours. So if you get too many, but yeah, I commend what they've done.
No. For our own personal use, we used to process our own pigs. That was our annual holiday cold weather tradition. Snow falling, had the big vat, render our own lard. He was an excellent lard maker, by the way. My father taught him how to render lard. And so then we cure hams, our own prosciutto type hams. But that's only for our own consumption. But that was a tradition. But now we have stopped doing that, and we have to take anything that we retail, we have to take it to a USDA inspected facility. I just had to go take our pork to almost Charleston, South Carolina, about 2 or 3 weeks ago to get it processed like we wanted it. They're making our prosciutto type ham right before the holidays, thinly sliced, salt, sugar cured, and then have it in 1 pound packs. And that won't be ready before Christmas, a little before Christmas. But that's, nobody in North Carolina could do that. No processor. We take that it's a 2-hour drive. It takes me 5 hours. I'm the one that does the trucking. So I'll have to take off at least a half a day of work and then go to Matkins processor above Elon College. I did apply for another grant as an extension agent because I probably work with 10 or 15 small farmers who direct market their meats. And they wanted me to apply for a US NCDA grant, which I did 3 years ago. Hired another company of 2 gentlemen to do a feasibility study on establishing a new slaughter facility in our region, and it was supposed to be located in Warren County, but that has yet to come to fruition. But that was be one that all of our region farmers could use instead of being scattered all over South Carolina, North Carolina. But that's one of our main drawbacks is that processor. And if we say we want cubed steak and 1 pound packs, he might come back. He knows he has this over a fire, that he's like the only one around. And he might come back with 10 pounds packaged in ribeyes or something like that. So different, they don't really follow directions. We have never yet to get an order right. We scan it, we write it, we email it, yet to get an order right. Is that not right?
That's the hardest part of the business. I love raising animals. I love going to the markets, but dealing with the processor is the most difficult thing. And if you think about it, we have to drive a big truck, take the animals, go 200 miles, then we have to buy a big truck to get the trailer to get the meat and everything. That's 400 miles just to get it before we can sell it. And that's the most difficult part.
One more question?
Yes, ma'am.
I've heard with the drought in the Midwest that a lot of farmers out there are having to sacrifice cut down their herds, and next year is likely to be obviously going to be a shortage of vegetables down there.
That's what we've heard. North Carolina, because we've had plenty of rain and good pastures this year, so a lot of our farmers are doing, I would say, holding their own. Prices were at a record high back in June. And then when the corn shortage, because of the corn and the feedlots, the corn's just gone sky high. So the price of calves had come down, which it typically comes down in the months of July, August, September, and October. But we're hoping that the prices will go back up a little bit and next spring. So that is what we've been told. We also have some farmers that have contacted me that have excess hay this year. So we'll put that on a website, and the farmers in the Midwest can go to that website and hopefully buy some hay from North Carolina and get it shipped out there. Because they have helped us in the past when we had droughts, so now it's our turn to help them reciprocate.
We've had almost 35 inches of rain since the 1st of June on our farm. Unprecedented.
But we're having a hard time making hay. Like we said, we have about 40 acres on getting wet, and they're covering up hay because we're having a big rainstorm, they said, tomorrow and Tuesday. So we're trying to temporarily cover up hay we have stacked, and then we'll uncover it after on maybe Wednesday, let it dry out some more.
That's been wonderful.